Hey everyone, welcome to Java Byte. In today's video, I am going to discuss Spring Boot application annotation. This is one of the most important annotation in Spring Boot. This Spring Boot application annotation internally consists Spring Boot configuration annotation, enable auto configuration annotation, and component scan annotation. And the Spring Boot configuration annotation internally consists configuration annotation. Here we can say Spring Boot application annotation is a combination of Spring Boot configuration annotation, enable auto configuration annotation, and component scan annotation. Now we'll see the source code of the Spring Boot application annotation. Whenever we'll create any Spring Boot application, by default one class is getting created. That class is called starter class of that application or main class of this application. In this main class, we can see we have a main method. Means the execution of this program will start from this main class only. And this main class is annotated with Spring Boot application annotation. Now, if you dive into a source code of this annotation, see this Spring Boot application class contains Spring Boot configuration annotation, enable auto configuration annotation, and component scan annotation. So we can say in the simple way, the Spring Boot application annotation is a combination of Spring Boot configuration, enable auto configuration, and component scan annotation. I hope I hope here you understood the concept of Spring Boot application annotation. Now we'll discuss these three annotations step by step so you will understand the usage of Spring Boot application annotation. Now we'll understand configuration annotation. And this configuration annotation is used to mark any Java class as a configuration class. I will show how it will work. Okay, this is a simple Spring Boot application. Inside I will create a normal Java class. Now this is a normal Java class. If you want to make this normal Java class as a configuration class, and this class is get annotated with @configuration. And now this class becomes a configuration class. Inside this configuration class, we can define any number of beans. For example, if I want to create bean of REST template, I can create in this way. It will return the instance of REST template, and this method should get annotated with @bean. This bean is a bean annotation is a method level annotation, and the configuration annotation is a class level annotation. And here this app config becomes a configuration class, and here this configuration annotation tells to the Spring this app config is a source of configuration class, and it can be used by a Spring container. Here we can understand the configuration class contains the beans that will be managed by Spring container, and this annotation tells to the Spring that class can be used by a Spring container as a source of configuration. I hope you understood the concept of Spring configuration. And now we'll understand enable auto configuration annotation. This is one of the most important feature in Spring Boot, auto configuration. Okay, this enable auto configuration annotation auto configures the beans that are present in the class path. Means whenever we'll add any dependency to a pom.xml, for example, here I have added the Spring Data JPA dependency. Okay, whenever we'll add any dependency to a pom.xml, at that time enable auto configuration annotation, this enable auto configuration annotation triggers auto configuration mechanism, and at that time JPA configuration class will get active, and the bean of that configuration class will be created, and it will get placed in the Spring container. In this way, the enable auto configuration will work in our Spring Boot application. And now we can see internal working of enable auto configuration class. Now what we'll do, whenever we'll create any Spring Boot application, by default one jar is getting created. That jar is called Spring Boot configure. That one we can see here, Spring Boot auto configure. Inside this auto configure jar, we can see so many configuration classes. For example, here we can see cache auto configuration class. One second. So for example, if you see Hazel cache configuration, and this configuration class is developed by Spring Boot developers. All these configuration classes are developed by Spring Boot developers. So there is no need to implement configuration from scratch level for a developers. Instead, just we need to create a bean of this configuration classes and we need to use based on our requirement. Okay, these all these configuration will get active whenever we'll run our Spring Boot application. At that time, enable auto configuration will trigger as I said, it will trigger a auto configuration mechanism. At that time, these configuration classes will get active, and beans of this configuration classes will get created, and it will get a place in the Spring container. But here one more scenario is there. Here we can see any more number of configuration classes. But whenever we'll trigger, whenever auto configuration mechanism will get triggered, all the configuration classes beans will not get created. The beans of the auto configuration classes will get created based on conditional class annotation. Here we can see one annotation called conditional on class. This annotation contains one parameter Hazel cost instance class. Means whenever we'll add any dependency to a pom.xml, right, at that time this hazelcast instance class will be present in the class path. If it is present, then only this hazelcast cache configuration class bean will get created in the Spring container, else it will not create a bean of this configuration class. Because here there is no necessary to create a configuration of all the configuration classes, right? There is no necessity to create a bean of all the configuration because it's a waste of memory usage. Only the required configuration classes beans should get a create. For that reason, Spring Boot developers has created one annotation called conditional on class. So in this way, this enable auto configuration feature will work in our Spring Boot application. Now we'll see one more annotation. Now we'll understand this component scan annotation. This is one of the most important feature in Spring Boot, and this component scan annotation in Spring is used to specify the packages to scan for annotated components. And it enables in Spring to automatically find out and register the beans in the Spring container. Means what will happen whenever we create any component. For example, I'll create a class called demo, and this class I will annotate with @component. Now this class become a component. It's not a normal Java class, and this component will be this component bean will be managed by a Spring container. And if it comes to a Spring Boot demo application, inside this we have a Spring Boot application annotation. Here we can see component scan annotation, and this component scan annotation we can declare in the main class also, and we can provide here path of the package. So whenever we'll add any package path inside this component scan, this component scan will scan the defined package, and it will create a bean of the annotated components. So there is no need to create a bean of the components manually. Instead, it will take care by a Spring container. So in this way, the component scan will work in Spring Boot. And these are the most important annotations in our Spring Boot application. I hope you guys understood the concept of Spring Boot application annotation. If you have any doubts, please comment on the video. So I will try to answer your questions. And for if you like the content of the video, please subscribe my channel and like the video. Thank you.